Welcome to the What's Your Deal podcast, where we discuss business acquisitions, investments, management, and exit strategies. I'm your host, Matt Uhler. Let's dive in. Well, welcome back to another episode of What's Your Deal. Today is different. We've got somebody where they are going to interview me, and his name is Beau Bullard. Beau is a social media expert, and he's the owner of Bullard Media. And part of the reason that I asked him to join me is because he brings a perspective. He's never bought a business before. Even though he started his business, he's never bought one. So if you're a business buyer and you're interested in the top questions that business buyers might be asking, we're going to cover that. However, if you're a seller and you're thinking about selling, do not touch that dial, because all of these questions are the questions you're going to get asked when you decide to sell your business. So today's episode is going to be unbelievably valuable. We scrutinize these questions carefully. They are high quality, and we're looking forward to this episode. Beau, welcome to the show.
Matt, thank you for having me.
Yes.
Hey, so I prepared a couple questions for you.
Yes.
From somebody who hasn't bought in a business before. I'm excited to get into this. So the first question I have is, what is the best type of business to buy?
Well, that's a great question, Beau.
Thank you.
It's actually a question I get asked all the time because there's a lot of social media presence out there today that's focusing on an industry. But the reason it's such a good question is because you could have an industry that's phenomenal in Pennsylvania and horrible in Dallas, right? You could have customer or concentration of the industry. You could have tons of competitors. You could have all kinds of factors.
Right.
So I don't recommend business buyers focus on a specific industry except to make sure that it includes their core competency. And what I mean by that is if they've got experience in a specific industry, then I recommend that's one that they focus on.
Right.
But I don't generally just suggest that people pursue a hot trending business just because it's hot and trending, because that is no guarantee that it's going to be the right fit or work. And let me expand on this real quick.
Yeah,
I was working with a coaching client on Monday, and this client was looking at businesses that she had absolutely no background in, none. And we got into this conversation about, are you qualified to handle the problems that come up with that business? And in this situation, this person has no experience in construction-related businesses, but she was looking at one just simply because it showed up as a good business online.
Right.
And as I started to, interestingly enough, I've owned one of the businesses she was looking at from an industry perspective. So I started talking about the things that come up.
Right.
And the point was crystal clear.
Yeah.
It's the last business that she should have bought because she didn't have any experience in the terminology of that industry and the issues that come up, let alone the opportunities. How do you bid a new great job or any of that stuff?
Yeah.
So really, from an industry perspective, there is no perfect industry that somebody should focus on. It really connects more to the fundamentals about what they know, how much they can afford, the proximity of the business, the things that we talk about frequently.
Right. How does somebody find or discover their core competency, if that makes sense? Like, because we see a lot of times on social media with Alex Ramosi and Cody Sanchez, laundromats and all of this other stuff telling you like, this is just an easy cash cow that you can get into, no problems, but there's consequences with that. But how does somebody discover their core competency?
Yeah, another great question. And again, some of this stuff, because I live it every day, this is why I'm so glad you're interviewing me today. Yes. So core competency if you break apart the term, it is exactly as it describes, but it really relates to your experience.
Okay.
And so people have transferable and direct industry experience. So direct would be, I'm going to buy a restaurant. I've worked in a restaurant my entire life, right? That's direct.
Got it.
Transferable is I've not worked in a restaurant, but I have run my own business. I've managed employees. I've managed customer relationships. I've managed profit, loss, bills, vendors, so all of those skills, core competencies, can be transferable to a specific industry.
Got it.
But they may not be direct.
Okay.
So for somebody to identify what their core competency is, in my view, you literally could look at your resume Or if you don't have a resume, you just go, what have I done? Well, I worked at this business, and at that business, I actually had 37 people reporting to me, right? So there's management core competency.
Got it.
I was responsible for a budget. So I've got some budget core competency. So you extract them out of your past experience.
Right.
And back to the example I just shared, this client I was working with, extremely intelligent, but the conversations that happen in a construction-related business are very different than any conversation she's had in her background.
Got it.
That's risky.
Okay.
And that's why I suggested let's dive into her core competency and find something that fits that would be fun and not rolling the dice and potentially catastrophic.
Okay. What if somebody doesn't necessarily have a core competency in an area that they would like to purchase in? So for example, let's say somebody has been working at the post office for the last 15 years, but they're really into your example of wanting to own their own restaurant. Is there a way that they can develop a skill that they've worked at the post office for 15 years, but they really would like to own their own cafe or coffee shop or restaurant? Like that's their passion. That's what they would love to do. Is there a way to develop that skill to develop a core competency in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. So one is you've got the direct experience, right? But if you don't have the direct experience, you can research it. You can go work part-time. I mean, like in that example, let's say somebody's working at the post office and they want to do this, then maybe they start working part-time on Saturday mornings or something like that.
To learn it.
Yeah, and one of the things I've done with all of the partnerships I have is I partner with people who have the core competency, right? So with me owning over 20 businesses, I don't have all those core competencies, even though I have a good general knowledge from having been a broker for so long.
Right.
But I do understanding managing staff and customers and profit and loss and finance and all of these other core competencies.
Yeah.
So in a lot of my partnerships, that's what I bring to the table, and they bring the core competency of the trade or the necessary aspects of that business.
Got it.
And then we're off to the races.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So I am somebody looking to buy a business, and I am looking at these different businesses for sale, but these businesses for sale look like they're operating well. They're making good money. They have customers in there every day. Why in the world would those businesses be for sale in the first place?
Yeah, great question. So when I started in the brokerage industry 28 years ago, a long time ago, the average ownership time frame of a business seller was 18 years. So when we get a new listing, the previous owner had owned it for 18 years in a lot of cases. I mean, that was the average. Some were 30, some were, 15. Much, much longer. These days, people change what they're doing much more frequently. So it's not uncommon for me to have a very good business that somebody's only owned for a year and a half, and they're ready to sell it.
Got it.
And so it being for sale doesn't necessarily mean that there's a problem.
Right.
It just means somebody wants to do something different, and this is an asset that they can sell, just like you might choose to, change homes every few years or something.
Right.
Similar.
So you had say doesn't necessarily mean that there could be a problem, which means that there could be a problem or problems somehow. What are red flags that somebody could look for? And it could be totally fine. They could just be ready to move on and they don't necessarily want the business anymore, so they want to sell it and they put their time in, totally fine. But you said doesn't necessarily mean. How can you kind of spot red flags that may become a problem? Yeah, great question. And part of the reason that I appreciate that question is because a lot of buyers just assume if it's a profitable business, there must be a problem. It's not the case. I mean, I sell them every day of the week. Right. So it's just not the case. Yeah.
And to the second part of your question, if there's a new competitor in town and all of a sudden the business is for sale, well, is the seller running because they're worried about the new competitor? Or they just had a key employee that quit? Or, there can be things that as a prospective buyer is important to take your time to understand and evaluate. It's part of the due diligence process.
Right.
It's also part of the reason that I say in most things in business, in my opinion, there are exceptions, but speed kills. It's important to just take your time and let everything come out that needs to come out.
Right.
But I'll tell you, I think I can count on one hand out of all the transactions I facilitated where there was actually a skeleton in the closet and somebody was up to no good. Most often, people are just ready to do something different.
Right.
or they need to move, or they've got a health concern, or they've been doing it a long time and they're just ready to retire.
Right.
There's even one more. I talked with a client I'm working with yesterday, and we were discussing, should he sell or should he not sell? And we've got a buyer right there. And what came out of that conversation with his spouse is that he really is an entrepreneur.
Right.
Now, there's a distinction between somebody who's very entrepreneurial and a business person.
Right.
Entrepreneurs love the chase. They love the startup. They love the fast action. And when it becomes just day to day, it literally, like in this client, it's like stealing his soul. I mean, he's just, it's like turning a racehorse into a plow horse.
Yep.
So that can be a good reason to move on.
Right. Okay. I'm sure we'll come back to certain points of that. But as far as how sellers come up with their price, so as a buyer, you'll be looking at different businesses for sale and you'll see the price behind them. How does the seller actually come up with that price?
Yeah, there's lots to that. And it may be that we need to do a part 2 of this interview because there's
just about that.
There's so much content here that's valuable.
Right.
So there's all kinds of variations for where people come up with price. So some business owners just say, well, that's what I want.
Right.
That's my price.
Yeah.
Pay it or don't pay it.
Yeah.
Right. That's not super strategic. And it could be high or low.
Right.
Right. So they don't know.
It could hurt you if you just come up with your own
I've
price.
had lots of people who have bought businesses well below what I would have valued it at or what I believe the market would bear because they didn't know.
Right.
Right. So that's one. Number 2 is that they actually get it evaluated.
Right.
And this is another, tree
subject.
with lots of branches because some people go to their accountant and they say, well, what's my business worth? And I've seen lots of accountants where they'll look at a book and they'll come up with what they think it's worth based on what they think. Or they'll look at the book value. They'll look at the balance sheet and decide what it's worth. I've had some that actually go through a similar process that I would to determine what it's worth. And I had one accountant years ago. This was a long time ago, but he had a lot of clients that I was working with. And at one point I said, listen, how come you have one valuation model for the buyers that you represent as their accountant and a whole separate valuation model for the sellers that you represent? And he said, because that's my job. So literally when he's helping a buyer do due diligence, he's hammering on the price. It should be priced less. And when he's telling somebody what their business is worth, because the seller is his client, he's got this number that's just in that example unattainable. Which is why I knew him well enough to say, like, how's this work?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, as somebody who's a professional in this space, when we talk about that evaluation of a business process, or could one say an appraisal of a business, is it the same concept?
It is. So and this is why there's so many branches on this tree.
Right. Because like basically what would be the things, if you had to break down the first couple most important things when you're evaluating or appraising a business, what would be those things that you would look at first that are most important?
Well, let me come back to that because I've got another example. So whenever we help a buyer obtain an SBA loan, the business has to be evaluated. That's part of the process with an SBA.
Okay, pause. Also explain what an SBA loan is.
Great. Yeah, SBA loan is a Small Business Administration government-backed loan.
Okay.
And there are lenders, and I'll use big names just because they're familiar. Wells Fargo, Chase, big lenders that are SBA preferred or non-preferred lenders.
Okay.
And what that means is they can package loans, and as long as they comply with what the SBA requirements are, they are guaranteed that if the buyer defaults, they will get paid back.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what an SBA guaranteed loan is.
Okay.
Now, when you get an SBA guaranteed loan, the lender hires an appraiser to evaluate it. I'll just give you one example where I had 3 buyers for one business at one time. So did the market tell me what it was worth? Absolutely. I had 3 offers.
For sure.
Right? Not to mention my own evaluation.
Is that also maybe a sign that it was valued or priced too low, so people were jumping on it, or was it just valued perfectly for the market?
In that example, great question. In that example, it was just a very attractive industry.
Okay, got it.
And the offers all came in very close to what I suggested. So to me, that's the market saying that's the right number.
Absolutely.
The lender's appraiser came up with a number that was way higher. I'm going to say, based on memory, 30% higher.
Okay.
So I went back to the lender and I said, listen, the market has told us what this business is worth. What's with this appraisal? Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, I don't know. We wouldn't even lend it. We wouldn't even have funded the deal at that dollar amount.
Whoa.
So that's what I'll just call an appraisal that happens from somebody that's sitting in front of a computer, and their job is to give the bank something that supports a value. As opposed to, there are also business appraisers that literally will scrutinize them just like I would, and even greater to a large extent, for court cases and other things. Mm-hmm. And then the last piece of this tree, and then we'll move on, is a broker's opinion of value. And I've worked with business appraisers that actually have been brokers, and they understand it. But I guess in my opinion, when a broker has done their homework and literally met with hundreds of buyers and sold lots of businesses, they have a really good idea of what the market will bear because they're having that conversation.
Right.
And that's something that a lot of accountants or attorneys or even an appraiser who's not in the middle of a transaction might not have the same distinctions that a broker would.
Right.
Or an appraiser that's actually been a broker and really participated in those conversations.
Got it. Okay. For 1 second, we're going to stick on the SBA loan topic.
Wow.
Okay?
We went into the weeds.
We did.
All right.
With the SBA loan, for a lot of people, they may, including myself, at some point, they may have asked themselves, like, there's no way that I could get one of those loans. Like, I don't have the capital, I don't have the money, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's you watching this or whether it's me, or if you're looking to buy a business, like, what does it take to actually qualify for one of those SBA loans? Can anybody get an SBA loan? Like, what are the steps and what are the qualifications that they need? Yeah, so I'm going to give you the high level answer to that question. Okay. But the high level answer to that question is that when you're buying a business, most of the businesses that I work with, it's very different than buying a home or a car or most other assets. Right. Because when somebody's buying a home, as an example, the lender is qualifying them based on their ability from their current income to buy the home. Mm-hmm. Well, if you think about it, when you're buying a business, you're leaving your job in most cases. Okay. So the business needs to demonstrate that it can afford to pay for itself and support you as the buyer. So the significant burden of being approved for the loan actually falls on the business, the income producing asset that you're buying, as opposed to your income. Right. But the piece that does pertain to you is lenders want to see good credit, and good credit would be 680 credit score or above. Okay. And it needs to demonstrate that you've been financially responsible. I mean, if you've got lates on, a direct TV bill, 7 months in a row or something, that's not demonstrating, financial responsibility. You need to demonstrate that you've got proof of your down payment funds, which the bare minimum is 10%. Okay. I usually tell people 12%. And we'll come back to that. Yeah. And then transferable or direct industry experience. Okay. So from a buyer's perspective, they need those three things, and the lender is going to lean heavily on two of them. Got it. Which two? Any two. Okay, got it. There's not two in particular. There's just at least two or three need to be strong. So let me give you an example. So let's say somebody, and I don't love this example. I'm going to give you a different example. Okay. So let's say somebody's financially strong, right? They've got more than enough post-closing liquidity. Okay. Which means available funds after the purchase to cover their personal expenses, to cover a rainy day, any of that stuff, right? They've got an outside source of income. I just met with a gentleman I'm helping to buy a business who has a military income, right? From being in the military. Right. That helps because that's just income that's feeding his family. But maybe he doesn't have direct industry experience. Well, the lender is going to lean on, listen, it's financially super strong, outside source of income, great credit, back to your example, but they've never owned a restaurant or worked in one. As long as it's not a super complicated restaurant, more than likely the lender's going to proceed and say, we've got 2 out of the 3. Got it. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. 3 out of 3 is best. But I mean, I helped a woman with, she worked in the store that she wanted to buy. She had great credit, but financially, I mean, she owned a bicycle. I mean, that was her asset, right? Nothing else. Right. And we were able to get her the loan to buy the business that she worked for. Right. Because not only did she have
direct industry experience. She had direct industry experience in that business.
Got it.
Even better.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
So did I...
There's a lot there, no
Yeah.
question. So breaking it down is really valuable, because for somebody who, again, hasn't bought in a business and has had a lot of these questions, right? Like, it can go into the weeds quick, right? And I think for honestly, one of the biggest questions that most people have is, yes, Matt, I would love to buy a business, but I don't have the money. Right? The only people who can buy businesses are the rich people and all of this, which we've had this conversation before. But even going back to what you had said, like, you need a minimum down payment of 10 to 12%. You say 12%. And if you're buying a $1.2 million business, some would consider that you need capital, right?
Yeah. So I'm glad you circled back to that, because I got on a roll on the last
I know.
one.
That's good.
But the reality is there's lots and lots and lots of ways that people can buy a business without having their own capital. Now, again, it gets tricky, but it's done.
Right.
I mean, I've got some dear friends that because of some circumstances in their life, they had no down payment funds.
Okay.
And at this point, they own let me just say at their peak, they own 7 businesses, because they've exited some of them. So they went from not enough down payment money to roughly $10 million in net worth over a period of time, buying a business with no money down.
Okay. How?
All right, that might be part 2.
Yeah.
But the long and the short of it is, I'll just, for anybody listening, because that's
Right.
a unique situation.
Right.
You can partner with somebody who
Okay.
brings the injection. You
Right.
can have gift funds. You can't use borrowed funds, but there are some exceptions where that actually can work. There's a seller carryback arrangement, which I know we're going to talk about.
Yep.
But the seller can contribute to the buyer's injection under certain circumstances. So I guess my point is, I tell clients oftentimes, as long as the buyer wants to buy it and the seller wants to sell it to them, I will figure out a way to get it done.
Got it.
And when I say me and my team.
Yeah.
Because once you know the rules of the road, I mean, it's
Right.
kind of like, could you figure out how to get to California from here?
Right.
Sure you could. There's all
Got it.
kinds of ways.
Right. There's a
Same-
recipe.
Yeah. When you know the rules of the road, there's lots and lots of options to conquer that. So
Okay.
it's not ideal that somebody come to the table with no money down, but I've probably facilitated those transactions, 100 times.
Right. Okay.
No exaggeration.
Yeah. Okay, so we touched on this just a second ago, and we're going to jump into it right now. Will the seller actually carry a note? And kind of break down what that question kind of means, because we floated it around a little bit, but for somebody who doesn't know, I don't fully know, like, what does carrying the note actually mean, and then how can they actually do it?
Okay. So when you buy anything, but in this case, a business, and you don't pay cash for it, meaning I wrote you a check or gave you cash for
Right.
it, the balance needs to be covered somehow.
Okay.
And oftentimes that's with a bank loan, right? And the lender is carrying the note
Okay.
because there's a note,
Right.
money that's owed on that property. Just like when you buy a home and you get a mortgage, that's
Right.
a note,
Yep.
right? So seller carrying a note means that the seller is going to be the bank.
Got it.
Okay. And there are variations on that. I mean, there are times where the seller just becomes the bank 100%.
Right.
There is no other lender.
Right.
There are other deviations like we just talked about where there might be an SBA and a seller note.
Okay.
Right. So there's all different kinds of combinations. But the reason your question is so good is because there's lots of social media hype out there right now to just have the seller carry the note. Well, if you can get a seller to do that, that's beneficial. But most of the businesses that I help facilitate, the business makes good money.
Right.
So if you think about it, you're a business owner. Let's say your business makes $500,000 a year. To you, that's your discretionary earnings.
Right.
It's priced at $1,250,000 as an example.
Okay.
If I came to you and said, "Listen, I'd like to buy your business. I'll give you $100,000 down. Will you carry the note?"
Okay.
Why would you do that? You're giving up $500,000 a year in income,
Right.
so that I can run your business. Most sellers think that the buyer's not going to run it as well as they do, right? Because they've got experience.
Yeah.
And so I'm gambling that I'm handing my asset over to you and my income, hoping that you'll pay me back.
Right.
So sellers carrying an entire note can happen in distressed sales. It can happen in unique circumstances. It can happen where the seller is not keeping good books and records, so the business isn't financeable. Those are all good reasons for a seller to carry a note. But I can tell you the vast majority of my clients, like, no, I want to get paid. I want to go do something else with this money. And they might carry 5 or 10% to help the buyer into one of the circumstances I just described. But they are not interested in giving up their income, handing it to you, and hoping that you will pay them. And if you fail, there's nothing left. It's not like a commercial property where, like, okay, I'll take it back. I'll paint it and I'll sell it again. A lot of times with businesses, if the buyer fails, there's nothing but ashes left.
Oh, that's a risk.
Wow.
I was just getting ready.
Powerful, wasn't it?
That was good. Ashes. Because I was just getting ready to ask, what are the risks with that kind of thing? And you just basically described it. Now, if, let's say the seller won't do that. Let's say the seller won't carry the note. What are my options then when it comes to financing?
Well, that's where the SBA is the most prominent. I met with a client a couple days ago, and they were under the impression, which a lot of prospective buyers are, that, well, I can just get a bank loan. And I'm here to tell you, in my career, I've had 2 people get loans for buying businesses that were not Small Business Administration guaranteed. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is, unless the buyer has got way more assets than what they need in a relationship with a lender, why would the lender do that? All they got to do is run it through the SBA, and they've got a guaranteed loan. So I'm going to say that the primary source for a prospective buyer is going to be the Small Business Administration government-backed loans.
Got it.
So super important.
Got it.
And a great way to do it.
Yeah.
And they're difficult. They take work. But the reality is, if you can buy somebody's income and flip the switch the next day, making money for 10 to 12% down, that works.
And we didn't even really get into the subject, and maybe we'll get into it at some point, but the significant difference between starting a business and buying a business, right? Like my whole thought process, has always been, well, to start a business, like that's where I started with my business, was I'm going to start this business because I don't need $1 down. I don't need $1 to start this. I just need some inspiration. And but now it's worked out well for me, but I since talking with you and working with you, I've noticed, like, okay, things can progress so much faster, by buying a business, but it's a little more complicated. Let's walk through that kind of thing. So we'll come back to that, unless you want to dive into it.
Oh, we better dive into it.
Let's dive into it right now.
Fired up. So I've bought them, and I've started them, and all of that stuff. But the long and the short of it, and if anybody's listened to my information in the past, when you buy a business, or a business, let's just say, is a recipe, right? It's a formula for getting a specific result. So when somebody started, every business got started at one point. Somebody had to reinvent the wheel and develop that recipe. That takes time and energy and all kinds of trips and falls and an undescribable amount of, or an unidentifiable amount of money. Because you never know exactly what it's going to take, because you're forming a whole new recipe. A whole new formula. So if the reasons that I've started businesses is if I couldn't find one to buy, then I'll start it. Otherwise, I want to buy somebody else's recipe, because then I can evaluate the likelihood of my success. So if you came into my office tomorrow and said, listen, I want to buy a business, show me what you have, and I want to talk through them, I'm going to be showing you businesses that have ideally 3 years of tax returns in the file. Here's exactly what they made. You can see the trend. Why did it go down last year? Why did it go up for the last 3 years? All of those things. And if you bought it tomorrow, as long as you don't break it or something out of the ordinary, like I'm going to say COVID, because that's a great example of where a lot of people's recipes got interrupted. Then you ought to be making the same thing they made the year before.
Got it.
Because you're buying a proven recipe over a period of time.
Is that kind of where that term predictable income comes into place?
Absolutely.
When you have the stats and the data from the previous years, and that's really helpful.
Well, if you think about it, you can analyze what you should, even if you looked at the last 3 years of a business and say, okay, here's what it made. But maybe I'm not as smart as the seller, or maybe I am worried about another flavor of COVID showing up or whatever. Well, then you can discount it by 20%, 30%, and say, okay, even if I just did 70% of what the previous owner did over the last 3 years, I'm still okay. That's powerful.
Okay.
When you start a business, well, I hope it's a great location. I hope I don't need more space before I sign a 7-year lease. I hope I can find some customers. I hope I can capture market share. I hope I've got enough savings to actually carry the business through I hope it only takes me 2 years to get started.
Yeah.
Should I stop here?
No, keep going. Yeah. But it is all true things. Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah.
People do it.
Yeah.
And I have. And whenever possible, I would much rather buy a proven recipe and start making money the next day and pay the seller for the recipe than gamble on me being able to design it from scratch and how long it's going to take and what it's going to cost.
Right. No, that makes sense. Okay, so there's been this terminology that I don't really understand, right? Blue sky.
Yes.
The only blue sky that I know is the airport parking, right?
Yes. This is different.
So why should I purchase and what is blue sky?
Yeah, great. So blue sky is the part of the purchase price that's tied to an intangible asset. So what I mean by that is, let's say that you're looking at buying a business, and we'll just say it's $1 million.
Okay.
And the hard assets, truck, equipment, furniture, whatever, is $200,000.
Okay.
The difference between the hard asset value, $200,000, and the $1 million is blue sky.
Which would be $800,000?
$800,000.
Okay.
So a lot of prospective buyers get hung up on, well, I don't want to pay a penny for blue sky. However, if the valuation of the business was calculated correctly, it's based on what the business makes. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So let's just say, for round numbers, that business is making $400,000 a year in discretionary earnings. So the owner benefit is $400,000 a year. Well, are they going to sell you their business for what the furniture, fixtures, and equipment is worth, $200,000?
No.
No. They're going to want to sell it for a price that makes sense,
right?
Which the price that makes sense in this example, let's just say it's $1 million.
Right.
The difference between the 200 and the million is what's called blue sky, or intangible assets.
Got it.
And that can be trade name, customer base, goodwill.
Got it.
And to just simplify that, that's the value that comes in from the revenue of the business.
Okay.
So if the business has a history of demonstrating profitability, that's what you're buying as a buyer.
Got it.
Not just trucks and equipment.
Got it.
Right?
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's blue sky. And that's why, to me, I don't care how much blue sky there is, as long as I can anticipate that the income that was there will continue.
Well, but it sounds like to me the blue sky is the meat and potatoes. Like that is the significant part of the business, right? The customer base, all of that stuff, like the trucks, the tangible things, right, are all things that are less. They're important, but seem to be less important than the blue sky part, right?
Yeah. So the reason I like what you're saying is trucks and equipment without any customers is of no good.
Right. Exactly.
So even if but the customers and the history of that revenue coming in is what me as a buyer wants to buy.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, sticking on that kind of subject, but kind of switching gears a little bit, let's take a landscaping company.
Okay.
Okay. And I want to buy a landscaping company.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's blue sky with the landscaping company, then there's the tangible aspects, which is the trucks and the trailers and the equipment,
yes.
Right? But let's talk about the people that are at the business that I want to buy, the employees, right? How can I guarantee that those employees at the landscape company that I want to buy, or whatever business that I want to buy, right? Restaurant. But in this case, landscape, how can I guarantee that those employees will stay and not leave the moment that I buy the business?
You can't.
I was worried you're going to say that.
But you can't. But there are deviations to that. So in a lot of businesses, if there's key employees, sometimes the seller will agree to let the buyer interview a key employee at an appropriate time, which means after due diligence is done and after financing is approved and all of that stuff. Yes, you can meet the key employee.
Right.
And get a level of comfort that they're going to stay, and or even enter into an employment agreement with them.
Okay.
I have lots of deals where that's a criteria, because the buyer is concerned that, listen, if that key person leaves, this business could be in serious trouble.
We're cooked.
But the reason I said you can't was when you said all of the employees, right? I mean, are you going to interview
everyone?
A landscape company with 50 employees? You're going to interview every employee? No. The seller's not going to let you do that, nor should the buyer typically even want that, just because that's a whole nother conversation. But
yeah.
So some of this comes with, there's a recipe. When you buy a business, they've not always had the exact same staff over the last 5 years. None of them have changed. I mean, they're hiring, they're firing, their people are leaving. There's natural attrition, you know. And it's one of the things that I determine when I'm valuing a business as part of the value.
Right.
Is there one key person, and if they leave, the thing is trash?
Yeah.
Or is there like, well, there's a manager and there's 2 assistant managers and they're cross-trained with the manager
Right.
that's the ideal scenario where
Right.
there's levels of human resources.
Right.
So that if one leaves, quits, passes away, whatever the case may be, it's not the devastation of the business or
Right.
the buyer if they bought the business.
Okay. So as the audience advocate right now, I have to ask this question, and it may be more targeted for like a buyer-seller conversation. I don't know. But when it comes to the person who is selling the business, how do they protect the employees that they have at the business from a buyer coming in and replacing everybody?
Great question. I've only seen it once where a buyer came in and felt like they knew everything there was to know and treated the staff in a way that the staff left.
Mm-hmm.
That's not why people are buying a business. I mean,
Right.
most people are buying a business because there is that human resource
Right.
in
That makes
place.
sense, yeah.
So, and especially, I'm going to say in the last 10 years, the human resources that are in place are one of the most significant resources
Of course.
because they're trained and they're there and they know what the job is and all of
You
that
don't have to
stuff.
go through the
So-
hiring process and hire a bunch of people. That makes sense.
Yeah, so you hear of what you described in corporate takeovers and like we just replaced the whole management team or something. That's not what happens in Main Street businesses. Most Main Street businesses, the buyer is very concerned that when they buy it, all the staff are going to quit. Mm-hmm. And the opposite is true. The staff are almost always concerned that the buyer is going to come in and fire them all.
Right.
And neither one makes sense.
Yeah.
The staff need jobs. They've got homes to pay for and cars
Yeah.
to pay for and all that stuff. And as
Right.
long as the job continues, more than likely they're going to stay.
Right.
And the buyer needs them.
Okay. Cody Sanchez talks about this Main Street millionaire quite often, and you just mentioned Main Street business, right? What is a Main Street business?
Yeah, so a Main Street business, there's Main Street businesses, and then there's mid-market, and again, you can find lots of different definitions for this. But I'm going to say that you and I will say that Main Street businesses are a business with revenue of $7 million a year or less.
Okay.
And mid-market, let's just call it, and you'll see 5 or 10 million, but let's just call it 7 million a year up to 50 million a year.
Got it.
Right? That's the distinction. So Main Street businesses for you and I are the ones we're driving past every day of the week.
Okay. So literally the ones that you'd be driving down on Main Street, seeing the laundromat,
Coffee shop, landscape truck, manufacturing company,
Got it.
distribution center,
Got it. Okay.
those are Main Street businesses.
Okay. Probably one of the last questions. There'll probably be 2 questions left. But what if the lease is short, right?
Uh-huh.
The lease is short at this business. Should I consider moving the entire business itself?
Please do not consider moving it. Because so there's 2 parts to the question. Moving the business, what happened to our recipe?
Right.
Right? And not only, like I've had businesses where the location was not, matter of fact, I'll give you an example of one of my partnerships.
Right.
The location of the business was not site specific, right? We could be down the road, we could be in another city because we don't have customers coming to that business. But when we had to relocate our business, a very large business towards the mid-cap type business, we had our security deposit for the new space we were moving into was $175,000.
Okay.
So huge outlay of cash.
Yep.
Then we had to take everybody from their working role. They're used to showing up and doing a job. Now we're trying to get phone. Oh, the phone didn't work. Why is the Wi-Fi not working? We just had to put in. So the level of interruption that comes from moving even an established business is mind-boggling and can be super expensive.
Got it.
So for a buyer who just bought a recipe, the last thing, in my opinion, that they should contemplate as a great idea is the need to move it.
Right.
And who knows what part of that recipe just went out the window.
Right.
I even had one where the buyer was looking at moving it to closer to their proximity, and several of the staff weren't going to drive that far. Again, those are things that you might not know.
Right. That is something that you talk about though a lot, which is, when buying a business, proximity. Are you close enough to the business to where you could work with it? Now, are you talking also about proximity to the business, to the team also? Like to where the team can get to it conveniently and enough and all of that?
So that's a factor, but what I'm referring to when you hear me talk about that specifically is somebody looking at buying a business that's 2 states away. they really influence
got it.
if something happens, can they get there?
Not an hour versus 25 minutes.
Absolutely.
Got it.
But the alternate part of that question is you start losing tenured staff because you decided to make it closer to where you are. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this idea too, where it's like something that business owners seem to forget sometimes is that you work for your employees, not the other way around, right? Like you need to create a culture with them that makes it seem like they want to stay. And that could be part of it, right? Not putting yourself over them when it comes to the proximity of where they need to be getting, right? If you put yourself first, like this is right next to my house, but you now have to drive 2 extra hours to get there. That's ridiculous.
Well,
it could be.
Well, and again, there's levels, right? I mean, if somebody's buying a business with 200 employees and whatever, I mean, that's a different level than Main Street, right?
That's true.
But most Main Street business owners, I heard it once said, and I really appreciated this because I can relate, that, I can outwork anybody, but I can't outwork everybody.
God,
and so if you're going to reach a certain level of business ownership and success, you need people to support. And those can be employees and partners and teammates and whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
The only way to scale beyond what one person can do is with a team.
Right.
And that makes every team member important along the way. So let me just circle back before we wrap up to the question about the lease, because a lot of people are very concerned. A lot of prospective business buyers get very concerned that, well, there's only 6 months left on the lease, or it's a month-to-month lease. That is an appropriate concern, but it's one that almost always is going to get addressed in the process.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that there's going to be, again, if it's handled appropriately, there's going to be a contingency in the purchase agreement that allows for the buyer to get the lease they want.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't care if it's month to month or if it's 2 months left or 6, because I know I'm not going to buy it unless I can get a lease that makes me happy.
Right.
And nor should you.
Right.
And if there's a lender involved, the lender's got to be happy with the lease as well.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing to be aware of, but it does not need to be a deal breaker unless you literally can't get the lease you need.
Right. Okay. That all makes sense. There's a lot to unpack with
Holy
all of this.
mackerel.
Part 2, I think, is coming quick. But this is an important question that I want to ask you. I've never met an entrepreneur or a business owner or somebody who has a massive amount of success and they did it alone, right? And so I want to ask you, who is somebody who was extremely instrumental in your process, in your life, to help you become successful?
Yeah, and this is a question I always ask on my podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a standard question because to me, it brings it back home to, it's easy to look at somebody and think they always had it or there was always luck or whatever.
Overnight 20-year success. Yeah.
So the person that comes to mind, and there's actually 2 people, one of them's passed away since, and one of them I was just with a couple of weeks ago. But when I bought my first home, which was a duplex, so it was an income producing property, I bought it at an auction. It was a Fannie Mae auction.
Oh, wow.
And there were 800 people back in the day at this auction, and there were 300 homes being sold.
Wow.
So it was during a crisis, and so they were just dumping inventory.
Yeah.
Well, I was just a young man, and literally I would struggle with the decision to buy a pack of gum or not because it would cut into the savings I would have to buy my first home.
Right.
So I was going to this auction way out of my league. And 2 people that I'm going to call mentors and friends, but these guys took me under their wing. And one came with me to the auction to back me if I got outbid. I mean, think about that.
Wow.
I was a very young man at the time, 19 years old. And here's this guy saying, listen, if it goes over your head, I got you.
Wow.
The other guy, who is the person I was just with, he and his brother owned a large portfolio of homes.
Yeah.
And they were at the auction to buy homes, including the one I was going to buy.
Yeah.
And he said, no, you got it. And let me know if you need help.
Wow.
So I'm at this auction. And if you can picture this, I'm in a suit. I look different than I do now, but I'm in a suit because I'm trying to impress a lender. And I'm playing this.
And you're 19.
19, big boy game.
Yep.
Right. And here's a gentleman who's 20 years older than me on one side and 15 years older than me on the other, there to support me.
Wow.
I mean, think about that.
Yep. It's hard to find.
I was sweating bullets.
Yep.
And they helped me get to the finish line, and I didn't need their financial support.
Yeah.
But having their emotional support.
Yep.
It's really something.
I have to ask the question, number one, that speaks a lot to your character as a 19-year-old, right? Number two, it makes me ask the question, how do you find those people? And it's not like you can go out and just shop for them. I think it truly is like who you are as a person and who you attract. And I just think it speaks a lot to your character. So
thank you.
For anybody listening, like this is a testimony of making sure that you're getting around the right people, right? Like I think, there's the saying, you hang around with 5 losers, you're going to become the 6th. If you hang around 5 successful people, you're going to become the 6th, right?
That's powerful.
And so I think like with your example, right, you just were able to, whether it was God intervening in your life and putting you in the right places, you chose to be around those people rather than everybody else your age doing the things that people at your age did.
Yeah, well, and that could be a whole nother conversation, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So the way I met these people was that they were involved in a charity that my mother's work was involved in.
Okay.
So I met them because I was there helping at this charity.
Right.
And here they see this young man that's, trying to get after it in this world, right?
Right.
And then I started my business. So one of them became my customer, and I joined the Rotary Club. They used to call me the infant Rotarian. We didn't even realize until later that I wasn't even legally able to be a Rotarian at the age I was at the time.
Yeah.
I think I joined when I was 17, actually.
Right.
But anyway, these guys just got to know me. And I guess to your comment, I mean, I did what I did with integrity. I meant it. I was careful. I wanted to do good things. And fortunately, they believed in me enough to pour into me, which is something that's so important. I think we all pour into others.
100%.
They poured into me when I needed it.
Yep.
And as we're having this conversation, I'm connecting with that young man that's sitting in an auditorium with an auctioneer and houses being sold like this and more money than I was way out of my league.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what would have happened if they weren't there to guide me through the process and to help me.
Yeah.
It's a real significant factor.
People will say this a lot of times, and I call it, people will make excuses for not being successful. And I think this is huge for the audience, and especially huge for younger people who are wanting to get into business, but always make the excuse, well, that person just got lucky. I don't have that kind of luck. I don't have those kind of people around me. Are you putting yourself in a position like Matt was, where he's volunteering at a charity at 19 years old rather than going to bars with his buddies and doing drugs? Not saying that that's what everybody's doing, right? But like at that age, there are people who are like, no, I'm young. I'm going to do fun things right now. Don't come back and say that you don't have the luck that Matt did while meeting people at a charity event, volunteering with his mom, like doing things that most 19-year-olds would think is pointless or nerdy or stupid waste of time. Like you chose to do that rather than all this other stuff. So don't call Matt lucky, because like somebody told me this once. They were like, there is luck. That is a variable. But what's interesting is that the harder I work, the more luck I get. Right.
Yeah.
And so like you were working hard. You started a business at an early age, and you were able to find that luck. Right. But it was in the vehicle of hard work. And then you were able to meet these people who weren't your age, right? Who saw something inside of you that was able to kind of help you progress in what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I just want to share, and I know you know this about me, but the reality is I did the drinking and the drug thing and all of that. I just did it way younger than anybody should or most would.
Yeah.
And I saw the light early enough to put myself in the room where I could have a different life.
Right.
And I'm so grateful that happened. And, and the other thing I want to share real quick, and I know we're out of time, but I heard a story from a great friend of mine the other day, and he said he was fishing. Yeah. And as he was fishing with this guy, the guy's pulling him in, and they're all like, 2 feet long, 1.5 feet long, all this stuff. And he's throwing them back. And my friend's like, he's catching nothing, right? Yeah. And so he says to the guy, well, listen, why are you throwing back all these amazing fish? He said, well, I've got a 9-inch frying pan. I can't handle the bigger fish. Yeah. Right? And there's a psychological aspect of that. Yeah. Are you fishing with a 9-inch pan? Yeah. Or are you fishing with a friggin' skillet? Yeah. Or whatever.
Blackstone.
Right. Yeah. So how big is your frying pan? And do you see the fish all around you that are bigger than your skillet might lead you to believe you can handle?
Right. That's huge.
Oh,
so huge. Great. Yeah. We have to wrap up at some point, or Matt and I could talk about this stuff forever. So, look, I handle all of Matt and AMP Success social media. What he is building and what he's working on right now is absolutely incredible. So do yourself a favor and make sure that you're following AMP Success on social media. Visit his website. And if you have any questions at all about buying, selling, scaling a business, make sure that you get a hold of this guy and his team as soon as possible. And just stay tuned. What he has coming up, he has all sorts of projects coming up that are going to be really exciting and super valuable to you. So thanks for tuning in. And Matt.
Yeah, and well, thank you for interviewing me. You know, it's fun. This is clearly a topic I'm super passionate about, and so I appreciate you pulling it out of me today and having this dialogue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode and me being in the hot seat today, and we will look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And that's a wrap on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and got some valuable insights into the world of buying and selling businesses. Want to be a guest on our show? If you have a deal that you'd like to discuss with us or a business story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email using the contact information below in the episode notes, and let's make this happen. Never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a review. It helps more people like you find the show.